To order at 6:33, and I will call to order because we have one member remote by roll call. Ms. Stout?
Present.
Ms. Finnegan? Here. Ms. Gaines? Present. Ms. Gray?
Present.
Ms. Rogers?
Present.
Mr. Russell?
Here.
Ms. Henderson?
Here.
And the chair is here. First item on the agenda is the Monomoy Regional High School student representative. We'll give her a minute to catch her breath. Hello?
Hi.
Take your time, no worries. Oh, just push the button so that it's red.
Green. You bet. Hold on.
Take your time, okay.
Hi everyone, happy spring. Is this working? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, perfect.
There's been a lot of excitement lately with April break coming up. Last week, Dr. Otto took a group of science students to Fenway Park for STEM Day, where they got to learn about upcoming NASA projects and see a Red Sox game. And Mrs. Armstrong also led a field trip to the first annual Massachusetts Educators Rising Conference. Oh, sorry. That's perfect. That's
Much better.
Ms. Armstrong took a group to the first annual Massachusetts Educators Rising Conference at UMass Lowell. Mr. Sumner's AP Gov class got to meet and converse with the newly elected district attorney and learn a little bit about the local court system. Today, we hosted the Multicultural Fair where students created stations for over 10 countries with homemade food and drinks. We've also had a lot of travel lately. Over February break, students went on a service trip to Bosnia, where we got to work with Together for Our City to help feed hungry families in Mostar, as well as getting to see Dubrovnik, Croatia, and several other cities on some very long layovers. Just yesterday, another group left for a week-long trip to Japan, and students are now in the process of planning a trip to Italy next spring. Spring sports started up a few days ago with girls golf going undefeated, boys lacrosse carrying a 3-1 record, girls tennis going 5-2, and boys tennis going 6-1. Unified track also had their first meet against DY last week and had some really awesome races. As for the arts, drama concluded the spring musical 9 to 5 last month, and it was an amazing production. Band had their Pops concert a couple of weeks ago, and students from Harvard Chatham Elementary School got to see an early performance as well, which is something they'll be doing for the coming concerts. I hope everyone has a great night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful April vacation.
Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is public comment. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, additional time at the discretion of the chair. I just wanted to take a moment to just share that we had a productive meeting recently with a lot of public comment, and I want to continue to encourage the public comment and the public to come and share their thoughts and opinions with the school committee, and we thoroughly appreciate it, and that the committee fully supports the district and all its work, and that we continue to encourage productive conversation, constructive conversation, and support. Thank you so much. And do we have anyone for public comment? Oh, sorry. Hi, Mark.
Hi. Hello, Mark Smith, employee of the district. I live at 49 Cummings Road, Brewster. And before I start, I just want to say that my comments are my comments. They haven't been, discussed with any other employee of the district. The only person that I've consulted with is my wife. And I'm hoping for a little bit of the Charles Brusca grace with my comments. So, good evening. My name is Mark Smith. I've been an employee of the Monomoy Regional School District for almost 5 years. I've also previously spent 5 years as a building principal, 3 years as an assistant principal, and 10 years as a teacher. And the last 21 days have been the most demoralizing days that I've spent as a public school employee. On March 26th, I sat in this room in absolute horror while my professional reputation, character, and very identity was publicly called into question. Following 2 speakers who used words like stress, painful, and embarrassing when describing the private individual attendance letters that staff received as a way to decry the superintendent for issuing those letters, the same organization used public shaming as a way to address a labor dispute. It's hard to understand why such a dehumanizing approach and the stress, pain, and embarrassment such an approach would have on me was better than any one of a wide variety of other options at their disposal to address a labor concern. It seemed a jarring juxtaposition. On the one hand, you had a request that our leadership team be more considerate of the feelings in their future actions, and on the other hand, you had actions that seemed to be completely inconsiderate of my human feelings. I'd like to spend the next few minutes to try to attempt to do two things. First, I'd like to try to describe the impact that approach had on me, or has had on me. My reasons for doing this is that I hope that it informs our practices as a school community going forward, and I hope that this is never the way that we handle disagreement again. It's not the way that humans should treat one another. We all deserve more dignity. Second, I'd like to correct the record a little bit in some attempt to try and regain my professional reputation. In her book, Daring Greatly, Brene Brown writes, quote, "Men live under the relenting pressure of one relenting message. Do not be perceived as weak," end quote. I remember the first time that I read this, and how it hit me right in the gut. Don't cry. Don't let them see you sweat. Don't crack under the pressure. These are all messages that we hear early and often. And while I've worked really hard over my adult life to be more open with my feelings and be more vulnerable, on March 26th, I went into default mode. I stuffed my feelings into a box, and I stood in front of this committee giving a presentation on artificial intelligence as the people who had just ripped my professional life apart sat in the audience and watched to see if I would respond. As soon as I was done with my presentation, they left the school committee meeting, and still I stuffed. The next day, I had a task force meeting to run with a team of teachers. So I stuffed my feelings. I stuffed my utter embarrassment, my shame, my hurt, my anger, my fear, and anguish into a box, and I came into work. The problem with stuffed feelings is that two things happen. First, you can't just stuff the bad ones. So I quickly began pulling away from my wife, from my kids, and from my colleagues, and I felt the loneliest that I felt in years. The other thing that happens is that feelings manifest themselves in other ways. I stopped eating, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't focus, and I battled bouts of anxiety. I watched the recording of the video over and over again, perseverated on it nonstop. What if my children and parents saw this? What was my wife going to think about me? Failure, shame, stuff, stuff, stuff. Every person that I passed at the grocery store, passed at the gas station, walking in the hallways at school now had a running statement in their head as they walked by me. Oh, there goes the guy who's the misogynist. You see, that's the thing about making an accusation in a public setting, even when it's a veiled one, is that's all you have to do. Once the accusation's out there, it follows the person around like a cloud. Stuff, stuff, stuff. I'd like to tell you that I'm standing here in front of you and that after the last 3 weeks I've had some great emotional breakthrough. I'd love to tell you that I'm no longer perseverating on that night and I no longer have catastrophic thoughts about what it means for my future career. I'd love to tell you that I've come to some peace in the way that I was treated and that I no longer come to work assuming that everybody thinks about me differently. I want to tell you that I've regained the sense of family that I used to so proudly describe when discussing Monomoy. I would really love to tell you that this is not affecting my work, my personal life, or my health. Unfortunately, I can't tell you any of those things because I'm done stuffing. In the long run, I'll be okay. I'm resilient. I can thank my mother and my father for that. But most importantly, I'll be okay because I have a strong support system. No one member of that support system has been more vital than my wife these last 3 weeks. Without her patience, love, support, confidence, and compassion, I'm not sure I would have made it through. Now, I'd like to address the specific comments that were made that were used to paint me out to be a monster. First, I'd like to start with just a little bit of housekeeping. It was said on March 26th that multiple meetings, plural, were mediated between myself and employees, plural, over the years. For the record, it was a single meeting with a single employee, and the committee that we both served on functioned successfully for over a year, and we accomplished our goals. Big picture, I think the underlying problem raised on the 26th lies in a stylistic approach to conflict. I prefer to address conflict head-on. Ask anybody who's ever worked with me. Ask the entire leadership team, however they identify on the gender spectrum. I struggle with passive aggressiveness, conflict avoidance, and strategies designed to try to keep everybody happy. I would much rather we discuss and debate an issue face to face, up to and through the point of conflict in order to reach resolution. As Heifetz, Bradshaw, and Liskey say in their book on adaptive leadership, quote, surfacing the relevant conflicts is essential when an organization is falling short of its aspirations, end quote. But this is not everybody's style, and sometimes it creates tension and people choose other approaches to conflict. I work every day to be empathetic to this, and it's an imperfect growth process. Now, 2 quotes were taken from public comments I made on March 9th. Those 2 quotes were, quote, sometimes people don't want to do things and have an attitude that you're not the boss of me, and they just say no. And the second one was, quote, we need to have someone in the room who can say, yes, this is and we are doing this, and I am the boss of you, end quote. The way these quotes were presented on March 26th were used to present me in one particular light and failed to represent the context in which I said them. In actuality, these quotes were made in response to a specific question asked by a school committee member who wanted to know why the leadership team believed the 2 curriculum director positions need to be supervisory and not coaches. As I said that night, regardless of profession, sometimes leaders need to have difficult conversations, and as a last resort, need positional authority when an employee is not meeting expectations. As a leader, sometimes you have to be the boss. It stinks, but it comes with the job. Finally, 3 concepts were utilized to infer that I was a misogynist. The first was a quote from March 9th when I said that in the mid-1800s, public schools were staffed by low-status females with no training, and that the male was hired to administer the building, end quote. It can be a delicate dance sometimes when presenting publicly, between providing enough information and not going into too much detail as to come across as being condescending. In this case, I judged incorrectly. So let me provide just a little bit more information and a little bit more context. From an easily accessible source put together by PBS called Only a Teacher, a Teaching Timeline, under the heading 1840, Feminization Begins, this source states, quote, while the dame school teachers were not particularly well educated, they did demonstrate that women could teach, end quote. It goes on to say that, quote, in many schools, the new school marms were young, some only 14 or 15 years old. They had finished the equivalent of 8th grade, and in some schools that qualified them to teach, end quote. Further, to understand the thinking of people who were in charge at that time, it includes a quote from the Littleton School Committee, who in 1849 wrote, quote, God seems to have made woman peculiarly suited to guide the development of the infant mind, and it seems poor policy to pay a man $20 to $22 a month for teaching children the ABCs when a female could do the work successfully at 1/3 the price, end quote. The point I was making on March 9th, and that I will make every time I'm asked, is that we have to understand our history, understand what was going on at the time, that the systems and structures, at the time that the systems and structures were created when examining those systems and structures in the present. The model of public school leadership, one principal overseeing a building filled with teachers, is an arcane system designed by arcane thinking about teachers and the qualifications needed to be a teacher. My point was that we need change. And I believe that the teaching is a profession, and I hold it to highest standards. The rest was just a single quote taken out of context. The second idea used to paint me as a misogynist was that the conflicts occur primarily with female employees. Let's just start with some facts. The United States today, 74% of all teachers are women. Here in Monomoy, that's 79% of our teaching staff is female. At the elementary level, that number is 91%. That means, as part of my daily work, 4 out of every 5 of my interactions with a teaching staff member is female. At the elementary level, that becomes 9 out of every 10 of my interactions. I was raised by a strong, independent, fierce woman. So I've always believed women are equals, and I'm raising my daughter to be just like my mother. And as I previously mentioned, I see the teaching as a profession, and I hold it to a high standard. I hold myself, the leadership team, the school committee to that same standard. Children's lives are at stake. Sometimes that passion rubs people the wrong way. I get that, and I work on it every day. Was that meeting that was described on the 26th the best meeting I've ever run? Not even close. Is it in my top 10 worst? It's definitely a contender. I am human, and I make mistakes. These last 3 years have been very difficult on our students, our staff, our teachers, and a group that we don't often talk about, our leaders. I've watched this leadership team get ground to dust over these last 3 years. Yet they continue to show up each and every day, leaving weeks of vacation time on the calendar, sacrificing hours of their time with their families, taking on the stress of their staff, managing constantly changing conditions, all while trying to stay positive, keep morale up, stay calm, project confidence, manage their own emotions, all so that they can be available to their staff. But we get exhausted too. We have bad days too. Statistically, those bad days are going to happen more often in front of female teachers than in front of male teachers. Finally, it was said that I ended the discussion with a group of teachers abruptly by saying, quote, they were getting emotional. That is almost entirely true. There's only one small part that needs clarification, and that is in the pronoun that I used. I said that we were getting emotional. As was stated, the meeting got away from its intended purpose, and as the facilitator of the meeting, that was ultimately my responsibility, and ultimately I failed. We ended up in a different conversation where teachers were sharing their emotions with me, and that erased emotions in me. In hindsight, I should have redirected the meeting, and I didn't. The meeting reached a point where I realized we were no longer making progress, and I ended it. I'm sorry that got interpreted as me shutting down a meeting because there was a group of women sharing their emotions. I wish I had been approached to clarify this. I'd like to close with one final thought. What happened to me on March 26th cannot be the way we choose to engage as a Monomoy school community. We cannot choose to talk about someone over talking to them. We cannot choose to lift up the humanity of one individual or group of individuals at the expense of another. We cannot work to create stories and narratives that cast each other as heroes and villains fighting against one another. We are all here to serve the children of Monomoy, and there are ways to settle our differences that maintain dignity, respect, honor, and humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Is there anyone else for public comment? To close public comment, I will just say that we are all proud to be Monomoy Sharks, and we will continue our motto of Monomoy Sharks are safe, honest, accepting, respectful, kind, and successful. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. First approval would be for the March 9th meeting. I will look for a motion.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And any discussion or questions? And a roll call, Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Finnegan?
Approved.
Ms. Games?
Aye.
Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Henderson?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye. March 23rd, 2023, school committee meetings?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And any questions or discussion? All right, Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Finnegan?
Abstain.
Ms. Games?
Aye.
Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Henderson?
Aye.
Chair is an aye. And then the April 3rd, 2023, school committee special meeting minutes.
So moved. Sorry.
Motion, so moved. Second?
I would second that.
Second by Terry. And any questions or discussion? All right, and roll call, Ms. Stout?
Abstain.
Ms. Finnegan?
Aye.
Ms. Games?
Abstain.
Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Henderson?
Abstain.
And the chair is an aye. I think we're good there, counting fast. First item on the agenda for reports and discussions is the Westgate Fellowship recipient. Michael Westgate is here to join us. Nice to see you, Mr. Westgate.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm sorry Pam Glaswell is unable to join me. But I would like to thank Tina Games and Julie Dykens and Ann Westgate who are here, other committee members, Jillian Stockwell, Sherry Armstrong, Kelly Friendly, and Rich Houston. Nancy Gifford last summer attended a University of Texas astronomy course on the solar system. She was selected among national science teacher applicants and made outstanding use of her $1,500 Westgate Fellowship. In addition to attending the week-long astronomy program, which was very intensive, she was able to explore the nearby desert on her own and reported that it was a very invigorating post-COVID experience that helped her devote new ideas and new energies to teaching science at the middle school. This summer, delayed by 2 years because of COVID, John Dixon will be traveling to Rwanda with other teachers, observing firsthand how that country is reintroducing democratic institutions after its tumultuous past. He hopes to be able to take students there in a future year, as he has to Tanzania in the past. This year's Westgate Fellowship of 2003-26 goes to Lane Kotoski, the first graduate of MRSD to receive one. We'll let Lane explain briefly how she'll be studying Spanish in Bogota this summer. Lane?
Thank you.
Hi. Hi, thank you very much for having me.
We missed you, Lane.
I know, I was gonna say.
She used to be our student
Thank you.
representative.
Yes, and I remember scribbling my notes in the back of my dad's car, trying to think about what I was gonna say. So here I am I graduated, I was class of 2016, so I was actually a junior when this new beautiful building was built, and I went off to college in California. Miss Police was my guidance counselor. And so I'm back, and I'm so grateful to be back. I started last year teaching Spanish. And so I'm so grateful. I want to say thank you so much to Dr. Carpenter for, on the first day of school, saying to me, you need to apply for the Westgate Fellowship. So I was so grateful to have the opportunity and to meet with the Westgate Committee. So what I proposed to them, and they ultimately approved, was to go for about 3 weeks to Bogota, Colombia. I actually went to Bogota when COVID, like literally the week that the world shut down. So I was there for 3 days and the border started closing, so I'm so excited to go back. And especially now that my lovely colleague, co-teacher is Colombian, so I can celebrate her culture alongside her. So I will be studying at a university in Bogota. It's called Externado de Colombia, and it's a course for professionals that have sort of an advanced level of Spanish that are trying to improve and have more of an immersive experience. So I will be there for 3 weeks. I will land on America's birthday, July 4th, and be celebrating in Colombia. And I will be doing every day 3 hours of Spanish class in the morning, and then in the afternoon some type of excursion. So a salsa class, or I know it's really going to be a struggle for me, a cooking class, something of that nature. We're going to be doing, we're going to go to the Gold Museum. We're going to go to some salt caves. So I'm so excited. And I just want to say thank you so much to the Westgate Committee, and especially to Dr. Carpenter for encouraging me to apply. And I'm trying to think of what else I have to tell you. Yeah, 3 weeks, Colombia. I will be there for the summer. So thank you for having me. Yes,
Congratulations. Thank you. Yes, amazing.
thank you.
That was a wonderful full circle story too, from beginning to end.
I love it.
Proud
Thank
to
you.
have you. I'll open up for questions or discussion if anyone has anything. Ms. Henderson?
I just will you come back in the fall and tell us all about it?
Of course, I'm so excited.
Excellent.
I want to be a new spokesperson for the Westgate and to the school committee. Perfect.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, great.
Okay.
Mr. Russell?
Just nice to see you in front of that podium.
Thank you
Your
so much.
enthusiasm, and that is very contagious.
Thank you.
So it's thanks for the shot in the arm just to see you back with us.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Perfect,
Mr.
thanks.
Westgate, do you follow up?
Yeah, I too would like to thank Scott for steering Lynn in the right direction, and hope that he and other administrators will do so even more in the future. We see the Westgate Fellowships as providing yeast in the system. It's a very small amount of money, but it does provide, as you said, a shot in the arm. The 70 teachers that have received fellowships in the past 40 years have impacted about 100 students each year for at least 15 years. So I figured about 100,000 student years have been impacted by the Westgate Fund, and so it's a lasting investment. To make it easier for teachers, I have a few things to announce. We're instituting a few changes. There'll be a fall application, October 12th this year, in addition to a spring one, which will be March 7th of 2024. It will enable teachers to do things during their winter breaks, as well as during the summer, and also get their thinking primed, so that all of a sudden they don't realize March 4th is here and we haven't gotten it together yet. They'll be given 18 months from the time that they apply until they complete whatever their objective was, which will again make it easier rather than saying it just has to be this summer, or it can be for this summer or the following summer. And then the third change is that we're making it available to teachers at the Cape Tech on the basis that Harwich students and Chatham teachers attend there too, and we want them to be able to benefit from the same east. So, any questions?
No, I think that sounds wonderful. We really appreciate everything you guys contribute as a foundation, so it's always a thrill to hear all the good news, so thank you so much.
And we're particularly pleased to have Rain as a...
Yes, we can't wait to hear about the trip.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.
Perfect. And I'm actually just going to pass down around the Westgate Fund report out from Mr. Westgate. Wasn't in your packet, but we're just going to pass that around so everyone has a copy.
Great.
Fantastic. Next item on the agenda, we're actually just going to move up, if everyone is okay with the Town of Harwich request for the Adventure Program surplus of land. Is Jeff here? Oh, you're behind me. All right. Just your name and where you're from, and we're ready to go.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Craig. I'm a resident of Harwich. I have a 5th grader and a 7th grader in the district, and I'm here to talk to you guys about a Project Adventure course. Basically, this idea stemmed out of the Harwich Youth Services Committee, which I am a member of. And after kind of kicking it around a little bit and talking to Project Adventure, which is based right here in Beverly, Mass., it was founded in 1978, is a nonprofit, the ball kind of started rolling. For those that don't know, Project Adventure works with not only adults and kids, but is basically following a paradigm of adventure-based learning, which is through any adventure in our life, there's a chance for education and there's a chance for knowledge. And there's also a chance for team building and gaining trust, which are all good things that obviously our kids need, but this program is also for adults. In your packet, which I believe you guys have, you'll see a letter of basically unanimous support from the Harwich Youth and Recreation Commission. That was a unanimous vote. So, you guys are my next stop, which is basically looking for a place to put this. Now, when I think about this spot of land, it's good for a couple of reasons. A, it's wooded. We want this kind of to be a natural setting. If it's, in like a parking lot or whatnot, which you could feasibly do, that kind of defeats another teaching moment, which is, talking about the environment and being a good steward of the environment. Secondly, it is diagonally across the street from the Harwich Rec Department office. So at that community center, you have parking available where, even the bus coming from, say, Monomoy Middle School can pull into the dirt lot, meet up with a facilitator and walk diagonally across the street into the woods to start their day, start their adventure, start their learning. So with that being said, after doing a little research, you guys are, the school district is the steward of that land, even though it's obviously Town of Harwich's property. So what I'm asking for is that you guys can, or excuse me, you as a committee can look at this land and look at this program and decide its value and hopefully decide that this committee could put that land into surplus to then be taken over by stewards, the Harwich Rec Department. And then that's the next step forward kind of in order to try to get this facility built for not only our kids, but for our teachers and our parents and people that come to this town and people that come to this area. I mean, this could be utilized, districts from Plymouth all the way to P-Town. And if anybody has any questions about the different benefits, I know in your packet there's, theories behind adventure-based learning from Project Adventure itself, but I am here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jeff, very much. I'm pretty good with maps, but I'm just trying to picture where this piece of land is, because I know it's out back off the side where the buses are, like with the softball field, somewhere in there?
So right when you take the right onto, towards where the buses are and before White House Field, it's right there at the corner. So it's going from Oak Street up to White House, and then the far end of the property is a retirement community.
Okay, all right, so it's that little square. Okay, great. Any questions for Jeff? Ms. Games?
Yeah, it's just a process question. So if we vote to send this into surplus, you said it goes to the recreation. Does it get in front of the select board at some point?
At some point, it would definitely I assume, have to. I mean, although I'm part of the committee, I'm kind of standing here basically as a citizen, and that's the way I described it to the rec department. So I would probably then have to go before them. The Recreation Commission asked about funding, and I said, part of the community preservation funds, there is an earmarked, one of the 4 categories is recreation. They even asked the Recreation Commission, stated, well, why are you coming before us? And I said, well, even if I was to be given this land, and I already had the money to build this course, eventually the town would probably say, well, the rec department should be involved. This is their scope. So that is my basic understanding, is that's probably why it would be the best to be under their care, because they would probably be the ones to staff it, to manage it, and to kind of, run it, would be the rec department.
Okay. I'm just trying to just understand the process, because I think the only concern I have, I'm just trying to understand where the land would go, because hypothetically, very, 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 very small chance that they might not agree. Like if we turn the land over and it belongs to somebody, then somebody could change their mind. So I guess I was just trying to understand the process of the land, because we've had surplus in front of us before.
Yes.
And I was just trying to understand where the ultimate decision would be.
I think if I were to think about the Chatham land, what would ultimately have to happen is that, so the rec department is part of the town of Harwich, so it would have to be within the budget of the town recreation department for staffing, operating, all that piece, insuring and all of that. In order to get that, they would have to propose, I believe, to the selectmen what it is they want to do and how they're going to do it and the money they're going to put towards it. And then it would be the town looking for us to surplus back to them for this use.
Okay.
So I'm envisioning that's how the process would go.
Okay.
So we're definitely, like Jeff said, I think this is the initial stages. It's just like, hey, I want to put this in your ear. We may be looking to come back to you in 2 months, 3 months, a year, because we want to use, we want to see if you'll be willing to surplus this over. This is just kind of putting it on our palette for now, digest it, but they still have a lot of work, to get through the selectmen and figure out how that piece is
Okay,
going to work.
good.
If I'm
That
understanding it
helps.
correctly.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
And Dr. Barber, did you have something?
Yeah, I agree with Jackie. I think probably before the committee takes a formal vote, I think there should be some movement and agreement that, a vote that happens at the select board level, that this is something that they're willing to, to fund and take on that.
Right.
I think a lot of times when we're having
Yeah.
conversations, even when it's the playground, behind Harwich Elementary School, like who's taking on responsibility for upkeep and maintenance and things like that. That said, this is something I would love to see, as a resource that the town can use and that the schools can use. My former district was blessed with hundred some acres of woodland, and we had a high adventure course, and it was a required aspect of the wellness program that all of our students went through to know and understand. And I think it was just a great aspect, where there was that outdoors nature, but also a lot of sort of teamwork and responsibility that's all part and parcel of, high adventure training.
Yep. Great. Mr. Russell?
If I could just echo Scott's comments. In my other life, I too had the opportunity to bring Project Adventure into a school setting in Barnstable. And it was an ideal physical setting because during the day we had a lot of children in there. And matter of fact, we promoted the fact some of our wellness staff, our phys ed teachers were also becoming interested in it and were certified in it. So I would really encourage this board here to affirm it, and just any type of encouragement we can do to make it happen in the next several years, I think it would be a great addition.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would echo what Mr. Russell and everyone said. I think it would be a great addition to the district. So, if we as a board are helpful in supporting you, come back and see what we can help with. But I do think ultimately it's going to go to the selectmen, and then once you guys get through that piece, we'll be here. So, excellent.
Very good. Thank you
Great
so much
work.
for your
Thank
time.
you for the working for the community.
much.
That's amazing.
Well, thank you.
Next item on the agenda, Monomoy Regional High School data presentation. Miss Jennifer Police.
Hello, everybody. Can I move that? Is that all right? They wrote a song on that. They wrote a song on that. Oh, thank you. Oh, there we go. All right. Good evening, everybody. Jen Police, Principal, Monomoy Regional High School. Good to see everybody. Hello, students. So nice to see you. I've entitled this presentation, Monomoy Regional High School Data Presentation 2022-23 Glows and Grows.
All right.
I like that. So I thought that we would start first with our enrollment data, which you can see has steadily increased since the year that we opened, which was the fall of 2015. And if you sort of look down to the bottom right there, it shows the high school enrollment trends, which this year we're sitting at just over 700, and next year we are projected to be somewhere around 725 students. And as of today, we registered our 66th new student this school year alone. 66. Okay. Yes, no? There we go. Next slide is, this also demonstrates the rapid changes in some of our district demographic data. And I think most importantly, if you look over to the right column there, you can see the steady increase. And we are closing in on being pretty close with the state average in high needs. So the state is actually, as of today, 47.7%. And you can see we are at about 45. Yes, I will stop there.
When you say high needs,
That encompasses the multiple data points that I just put up there. So that is economically disadvantaged and other. So the high needs is everybody combined.
okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yep.
Specifically, it's economically disadvantaged EL and special education
Altogether.
go into that.
I just wanted to.
So we are pretty
clarify.
aligned with the state percentage.
Okay.
As of 2022. So obviously, this year's data is not out yet. Another one that is of interest is Monomoy Regional High School graduation rate, which has, and dropout rate. They have remained relatively stable, but not entirely surprising that there was a slight increase coming out of COVID with the dropout rate and a very marginal decrease in the graduation rate. So not entirely surprising there. Okay. Was that? Oh, it's behind me? Oh, that's why. It's actually behind me. I just learned that. Okay. So what have we been up to over the last 3 years? So I'm just going to move this a little bit. So when I entered my role in the fall of 2020, we started to look a little bit more closely at some of the resources that we're putting in front of our students. And in many areas, and you can see here, we noticed that they were outdated, they were not aligned to frameworks and standards, and they didn't reflect the students in our building. So therefore, we started to bring in more high-quality instructional materials, and you can see here, what we've done over the last 3 years was we started to diversify some of our core texts in ELA. We upgraded our grade 8 science text. We changed our AP biology text, so it now actually reflects the exam that our students are taking. We replaced, or I should say, we implemented a new chemistry text. There actually wasn't one. So our chemistry teacher was teaching with materials that she curated by herself. We updated our U.S. history text, which when I started here was 17 years old, and it actually did not have 9/11 in it. Yes.
Oh, wow.
True. We updated we have a new world history text. We have a new AP European history text because we just started AP Euro last year. This school year, we started with a new math curriculum, Carnegie Math. I'm sure you've heard a lot about that. And just to frame that a little bit, because you're going to see that a little bit later, our teachers were using curriculum that was last rewritten in 2014. The math frameworks changed in 2017. So you're going to start to see, as we move a little bit forward, you're going to see where I think some of our issues stem from. So this is our first year of implementation, and obviously it's going to take a few years to see how the data actually changes. Carnegie Math is extremely rigorous. You can ask our 2 students over there. You're not in it, you are using it. Yes, it's rigorous. Yes, Christina is shaking her head. We started Project Lead the Way. We now have an engineering pathway. We moved our internship program, our career education and planning program, to a full-time person. We have enhanced our theater arts program. If you went to any of the shows this year, it's very visible. They're shaking their head yes. We brought back a school adjustment counselor, which was cut at the high school back in 2017, and we were able to replace that position this year and bring it back. We started unified sports in both basketball and track, and we have brought some social emotional learning and mindfulness into our wellness courses. So that's what we've been up to in the last 3 years. Not much.
Just a little.
Just a little bit, yes. Okay, so in the last 3 years, what are the new courses that we brought in that reflects some of what I've just said? So we actually did not have an advanced 9th grade math class. So we started to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we started to remove some of the barriers to advanced coursework that were essentially unknowingly leaving students out, and particularly students of color. And we started to change some of our practices, and we were expanding opportunities for students. So what you're going to see here is, in the last 3 years, these are the courses and the programming that we've actually brought in during COVID, actually. Algebra 1 Honors, AP European History, Honors Quantitative Reasoning, which is a senior level math class, CPR and First Aid, which is actually expanding next year. We're adding 2 more sections. Unified Physical Education, History of Medicine, History of Foods, Caribbean, Black, and Latin American History, Dystopian, Contemporary, and Sports Literature, a myriad of art offerings, automation and robotics, engineering design, and principles of engineering. And this is all within the last 3 years.
Question.
Go right ahead.
CPR, where does that, so I guess that's under health probably.
Yes.
But so if I took that or a student takes that, that's a health credit? I mean, how does
Yes.
that? Okay.
Yep, it's a semester-based health course, and they leave CPR and First Aid certified.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Any questions before I move on? Okay, so, yes?
No, we're good.
Okay.
Izzy just signed up for CPR, she told me last night.
There you go.
Didn't even know it was a
She's
thing.
going to be certified.
Another one now.
Wow.
Yep. Coming in 2023-24, which is next year, again, we continue to grow and expand. So, and too bad Lane is not here, but we also did not have a Spanish text or a French text, which we will be bringing in next school year. We're in the process of hiring a business and economics teacher. And why is that? That's because every little piece of data and survey from our students continues to say that they want more financial literacy. So Sharon Stout, I know that you're somewhere in the virtual room, and I know that you're going to be happy about that, but the business program is coming back for next year. Yes. We're adding a second school adjustment counselor. Obviously, that's needed, and you will see that later. We are adding a second pathway for computer science with our partnership with Worcester Polytech and Project Lead the Way. We are moving towards an AP capstone diploma, which we will discuss that at our program of studies night, which will be later. Next year, computer integrated manufacturing, computer science essentials, video games as literature. This is a new English elective. Algebra 2 and Pre-Calc Honors, that's a new course. AP Pre-Calculus, that's new for next year. Lifetime activities, nutrition, leadership and sport, adulting 101. Thank you, Dr. Carpenter.
Yeah, I like that.
That course will cover the tools of social emotional learning, digital citizenship, community outreach, and financial literacy. Christina is also cheering. And media and society, one that is important to me, advertising and marketing, entrepreneurship, and sports, entertainment, and marketing. That's what's coming next school year.
Wow.
Very exciting.
Wow.
I know. I'm only on the 7th slide.
Go back to school.
Sorry, Dave.
Ms. Masco?
Hi.
I will sit.
Yes, Christina.
Hello.
Right ahead.
I just wanted to ask about the school adjustment counselor.
Yes, ma'am.
You said it was canceled in 2017, and we have one currently, and we're getting another one.
A second one.
That's really good. I'm really
Really?
happy to hear that. Can I just ask who that is again, or who's the
The
adjustment
current
counselor?
staff?
Yes.
It's Miss Bader Natal.
Okay, that's good.
I think you've met her.
Yes, of course.
So that's the current one.
Great.
And she's fabulous. So this is just a quick slide that shows the shift in moving our career education program to a full-time coordinator position. You can see the dramatic shift in students that are currently participating. It's over 100 students. And this is also a shift. So in the previous years, when David ran it, in 2017 we started it, we only had 20 students, and it was second semester, senior year, and thank you, Dave, because he grew the program, but then I dragged him over to this side, and we had to pass it off to someone else, and now we have juniors in it too, so as long as you can drive, and you have a mode of transportation, so we're now looking at over 100 students that are participating year-round, so not just second semester. Thank you. Advanced placement trends. Okay. Let me move on here. Okay, so here you can see that we really intentionally focus on increasing enrollment in our AP courses, particularly for students that were underrepresented. And you can see that the total number of testers has risen considerably. So this is last school year, obviously, so we had 134 testers. Total number of exams was 241. And I think that one thing that's really impressive was even though we have increased the total number of testers, we've removed barriers for getting into courses, but our percentage of students that are scoring 3 and above is remaining pretty steady at about 75%. So that means that students receiving a 3 or higher are in most cases getting college credit. So that's really impressive, in my opinion, humble opinion. Okay. This is where we start to look at the grows. And I think you saw the slide. But we have to talk about this stuff, right? So, all right, so we're going to take a look at the state assessment data from last year as we emerged from the pandemic. So this is grade 8 ELA on the left compared to the state averages last year on the right. And you can see that we were largely pretty consistent with the state averages, which is a data point that you've already seen in other presentations over the last month or so. We're neck and neck with the state, for lack of better words. And again, this is grade 8, last school year. And this is where the new math curriculum, we hope, will boost this a little bit. So, obviously the slide demonstrates a much larger concern. So in 2022, only one student, or 1%, scored in the exceeding expectations range on the grade 8 math MCAS. So this obviously put us, you can see in the side by side, this did put us below the state average of 7%. So additionally, in the orange or the yellow, whatever color that is, we also fell below the state average in exceeding expectations, and then you can see that 63% of our students, so we outpaced the state in students that fell into the partially meeting. That's not where you don't want to be higher there.
Is this grade 8 spring of 2022?
2022. So this is basically the students from so the 8th graders last year, current 9th grade. We good?
Yep.
I mean, are we good? So this is just a slide that essentially demonstrates and shows the same data. It's just another way to look at it, but it tells us a story of students that are not making effective progress in math.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Do you know, and it's okay if you don't, if this is how it looked for them, for that cohort in 7th grade?
Yes, very similar.
Very similar?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So, and I mean, at least that's what Adam and I have discussed.
about.
Very, very similar. And similar trends that he's seeing now in some of his younger students. I think in, reality, we're seeing the effects of online learning and rotating cohorts and hybrid learning, with kids that are really vulnerable. And I think that's, we are seeing it. So this is a grade 8 4-year trend. What happened? Oh, there it is. So again, this is just a table that represents sort of what I would describe as a similar flat or stagnant achievement. So I guess my point is, it was a pre-COVID concern too.
Yeah.
We can't blame COVID. So this goes back to, I think it's 2018 there. Obviously in 2020 we didn't test, but grade 8 in 2018, 1 student. 2021, 2022, 1 student in the exceeding expectations. So, however, you can see that ELA certainly outperformed math, and I have my theories about that. All right, so now we're going to move on to grade 10. All right, so grade 10 ELA coming out of COVID does paint a very different picture. So, Monomoy Regional High School is well above the state average as indicated in the graph that you see. We outperformed the state in exceeding expectations or meeting, and we were also below the state average in partially meeting and not meeting. So this was clearly a glow. All right, and I'm going to go to math. And probably, all right. So grade 10 math, again, was a bit stagnant, as you can see, and we did not succeed at the same rate as ELA. We were mostly on par, you can see, we were mostly on par with the state and demonstrated a very slight edge over the state in meeting expectations, but again, something to keep in mind is that the state has reported its lowest scores in assessment history. So the state was down, and we are neck and neck, so relatively speaking, it was a decline. That's how I look at it. Even though here it looks like we outperformed them, the state was low. So we were low. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. We've seen this before. Again, this is just another way to look at the data. But if you look down at the very end there and you pay attention to the average student growth, grade 10 ELA last year, their growth was at 58%. That's pretty good. That's above that 50 median that we like to see. But again, math was below. It was below the median. We ideally would like to see 50, and we did fall below. All right. So here we have the grade 10 3-year trend. Now, you're saying, okay, so why is there a 4-year trend in grade 8, but there's a 3-year trend in grade 10? So in 2019, the grade 10 MCAS was redesigned. So it went from the legacy exam to the next gen exam. So that's why you see 3 years, 19, obviously there was no 2020, and then we have 21 and 22. Again, you see that ELA historically outperformed math, remaining fairly consistent. but again, very, very challenging during hybrid learning. All right, this is where it gets really interesting, at least for me. So, this is a slide that I pulled from some of our MAP data, and we just started MAP this school year, so we're in our first year. So, the elementary schools and the middle school are farther along than we are, but we've started to commit to this process, and we think that we've landed on something that really works for us. But I pulled this to sort of show that if you look at this prediction, right, it basically tells us how our grade 8 students are likely to perform this year on their grade 8 MCAS, right? So essentially, nobody is on pace to exceed expectations, which mirrors exactly what you'll see in slide 11 from last year. We had that 1% student. And actually, if you go back and look at that partially meeting, we were like 62%. And here it's showing 69%. So I guess the proof is in the pudding that MAP is a pretty good indicator of how your students are actually going to achieve on state assessments. So this is relative to our current grade 8, but it interestingly mirrors the exact data that we received from last year's grade 8 cohort. Is everybody with me? Okay. So again, it's really the same thing here for grade 8 ELA. Again, we do tend to perform a little bit better in ELA than we do math. And if you go back and you look at the slide that I think was page 10 maybe, you're going to see the same thing. You're going to see about 6% in the exceeding. You're going to see somewhere around 50% in partially meeting. It literally mirrors. Okay. So, however, there are definitely other factors that are contributing, right? So, which isn't captured by MAP or MCAS. And the rate of absenteeism, the rising discipline, substance abuse issues, and mental health challenges are absolutely playing a role in this larger picture. And the interesting thing is you will see continuously in all of our data, our youngest students, our grade 8 and 9 students are carrying the bulk of some of these challenging data points across the board. Okay, so let me just get to my slide here. All right, so these were our attendance trends in 2019 and 2020. So you will see that 14.8% of our students were chronically absent in 2019. Obviously, 2020, it's statistically not valid because we closed on March 13th. That's why it says 5.3%. Now, if we jump to the next 2 years, we have the return from COVID, we have the quarantining, we have the everything associated. Significant rise in 2021 to 25.3%, and last year, in 2022, we hit 29.2%. And I think that's pretty consistent building to building, yes?
It's consistent building to building. It's also consistent across the state and the Cape, so it's not, this isn't just an us phenomena. This is something that I think society has to figure out and address,
And I think one thing just to note, but in, during those 2 years, 2020 and 2021, the DA's office was not providing their Keep 'em Coming meetings, CRAWs were not being heard, so we were largely, as schools, left unsupported. They have brought them back, and we were seeing some progress, but again, it's going to be a while until some of this starts to stabilize.
Jen?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Sure. Mr. Russell?
Please, go
I'll
ahead.
take that as a yes. Jen, the count of students who are chronically absent, chronic,
18 or more days.
is nine days out of school, 8?
It's 18 or more for the school year. So that's the entire.
Okay, I said 9 because it's halfway through the year.
10%.
We've been looking at the same stats.
Correct.
So 18, wow. The other, which would interest me, the listing as you began.
Which one?
That's great stuff. Now, when it comes to identifying text in a certain department, what you probably do in some fashion is you get volunteers or a department head, and they research it, and they bring the best.
Yep, and I know Mark has talked about the process of vetting resources, and there is a district process that we use.
Yep. Just my own benefit, and not tonight.
Sure.
If you could just, because you must have signed some POs, if you could just give me the grand total of money
Yes.
that was spent
Sure.
On curriculum materials, it would,
I'd be happy to. Yep.
you know,
Yes.
good, thank you.
You're welcome. And, again, there's more to the puzzle here, right? It's discipline and mental health. And if you are not regulated, and if you are, struggling emotionally, it's really difficult to achieve at grade level. So last year in 2020, the entire school year, we processed 1,300 conduct referrals, and there were approximately 20 hospitalizations as of Monday. My assistant principals have processed over 1,800 discipline referrals, and we still have 25% of the school year left. We're up to over 75 hospitalizations for students, many that are unfortunately returning multiple times. So I think that's a piece of data that's not captured anywhere, but I do think that it's really important to talk about, and you can see with my first 3 slides the why we're making the personnel choices that we are. It's right there. Important solutions. So this school year, we started with a math intervention lab. So it's basically a math foundations course that runs just about every single block, first and second semester. We're now using map data to purposefully schedule students that need additional support. We also run in English, it's a skills-based English foundations course. Next school year, we're doubling the number of sections. And next year, I'm adding a grade 8 academic skills course for all grade 8 students. And because what I'm finding is that this is, we have kids with academic skill deficits, and then we have kids with a skill deficit, just like how to be a student. So there are a lot of variables here, and we're trying to address them as quickly as we possibly can. We're going to continue to work on vertical alignment of curriculum and instructional practices between the middle and high school. And like I said, we will continue our partnership with the DA's office to address the attendance concerns. And of course, we're going to build on our current social emotional learning initiatives, and we're going to capture more students for mental health support with our second school adjustment counselor.
Excellent work.
Any questions?
Ms. Rogers?
Sure.
Hi, Jess.
Hi. Great job.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your out-of-the-box thinking and how to address these really difficult challenges that are facing our students, teachers, administration. So what's involved with a conduct referral? Do they go to the adjustment counselor, or?
It goes to the assistant principal. So typically, like a conduct referral, so we like to have a tiered system of addressing discipline. Most discipline referrals, most discipline is handled in the classroom. So if it's reaching the office, it's chronic, or it's something of a magnitude that isn't managed in the classroom. So we're at 1,861 in the office.
Yeah.
And our teachers are doing a phenomenal job in the classroom. And I want to say that repeatedly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from Ms. Belize? Well, we have, yes, ma'am.
I just have a question. So with the conduct referrals, is there like a specific grade that gets them the most, or is it kind of?
I can get that data. I can also guess. I think it's probably what I said, and we're finding that our younger students are definitely impacted the most. And if I were a betting woman, I would say it's likely grades 8 and 9. Our seniors are not referred to the office. They're pretty responsible. But I'm happy to bring that back. That's an excellent question. I can tell you what the most common infraction is. I know that. What's that?
Please.
Do you want to make a guess, Christina?
Oh, no.
It's cutting Jocelyn. That's in the next
Cutting
presentation.
Jocelyn. Oh, that's the, okay, infraction.
And those are low level, or you don't fill out your MyFlex learning schedule. So those are sort of the low level offenses. Yes, Christina?
Yeah, I was wondering about the discipline and mental health referrals. Do you have any data for previous years? I know it was hard to gather information in COVID just because of...
Yeah, I have, like I said, I have last year, which was somewhere around 20. I don't know that it would be valid, so I would hate to put that out there.
Yeah. Along with that, do you think that with the help of our adjustment counselors and our wonderful staff, that the reason that there are so many hospitalizations is not because of a worsening mental health, though I understand that that's most definitely an underlying case, but could these also be just that the overall conversation about mental health has expanded and more students are taking their mental health seriously?
I think it's yes, and I also think it's that resources have been strengthened. So we went through a period of time where there were no options, and we are coming out of that, and the community has really sort of wrapped around that, and I think that I think it's more a reflection on the fact that there are resources for people to now take advantage of.
Alrighty, thank you.
That's an excellent question.
Very good question.
Right?
And I think Ms. Stout has her hand up.
Hello, Ms. Stout.
Hi.
How are you?
I am thrilled about, as you say, the financial planning, life skill, because I think that's a major problem in society. And of course, I'm extra thrilled that you've got the second adjustment counselor coming on.
Yes.
The plans that you have for course changes and all sound wonderful. I have only 6 students I'm working with that are in college now, but I'm hearing from all but one how these behavioral and emotional and substance abuse issues are hurting drastically kids in their, especially first year of college. I don't know if you're hearing that, or maybe I have a skewed population, but I'm really concerned and thrilled with some of the things you're putting forth and what you said about our senior class. And, we've got a little more time with 8th and 9th grade classes.
Exactly, yes. So just to quickly answer your question, and I have 2 members of my school council that are actually here in the audience, and we're having regular, open, frank discussions about the challenges related to substance abuse and the rise and the challenges associated with that in an actual school setting. So we're in the process of putting something together that hopefully the school committee will be willing to listen to. And so yes, to answer your question, that's a yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, ma'am. I had a couple of questions about the computer science pathway.
Yeah.
You said that was from Project Lead the Way.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about that?
So, Mr. Oldak?
Yes.
Yes. So we have partnered with Project Lead the Way, which basically, to put it in simple terms, it provides additional curriculum resources for him to follow. And many of the courses associated with it actually you can get college credit for them. They are written in partnership with Worcester Polytech Institute, which is a very prestigious engineering college in Worcester. And so we have a really strong computer science program, but this is a way to strengthen it.
Great. Are you seeing any increasing, what's it called?
Enrollment?
Enrollment, yes.
So absolutely in engineering, next year is going to be our first year for the CS pathway. So that remains to be seen.
So adding that to my schedule is happening. Thank you.
Good for you. More girls in STEM.
Yes.
Women in STEM. Yes, in the grants, yes. Okay, 2 more. Yes. Dr. Smith.
Sorry, just because it piggybacks off Christina's question. So we also, just a little bit of additional news, we also were awarded another Project Lead the Way grant for the middle school as well. So we're to support enrollment and just quality programming across the district. So we'll have, it's a multi-year rollout, just like all of these projects, but eventually we'll have, starting in 6th grade, Project Lead the Way programming, and sort of the idea is, and the way we're going to develop it, is to give kids a taste of both the engineering pathway and the computer science pathway in the middle school, and then we already have an 8th grade elective that kids can opt into as well, that gives them a taste of both. So it's, and it is, and with Mr. Oldak, I'm involved in a program, or a state-funded project, I guess, for lack of a better word, and we're looking at specifically how do we look at getting more underrepresented communities in STEM fields. Specifically for us, it's students of color and females within the STEM fields. So that's where we're currently under-enrolled. So yes, and we have some projects, and like it's even further down the road, but we're having conversations about, potentially, do we look at elementary, because they have an elementary program as well, but that's even further down the line. But there's a lot of funding in the state to support this, so yeah. So anyways, that's where those things occur. But we are in the pipeline, we have been awarded the grant for the middle school, so we'll start that rollout at the same time we're starting to roll out the computer science program for the high school.
You're welcome. And I think some of what that will do for us is you'll have kids coming in with those skills already developed. So, and there are a lot of new courses that are on here, and we will come back, as we usually do, when there are significant changes to the program of studies, and we will update you specifically on that. I didn't want to bog this down with it.
Perfect, great, thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Russell.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'd love to be able to say, Jen, that help is on the way.
Which kind of help?
Well, I've experienced it just with referral forms and counting them every marking period and trying to find a way to make a dent into that. And very similar, and that a lot of years ago. So things, I look at the state MCAS scores, and thank goodness misery does like company.
Yep.
And so we can at least refer to the fact that we're being troubled by that, but at the same, and this is a comment, no solution to it, but a lot of schools on the Cape are experiencing the exact same thing that we are. Now, whether 30% of that is an increase because of 2 years of inordinate pandemics that just hit all of us, I don't know what's the combination, but we look at this and say, what is it? You've got staff that's working right up to here with the hilt.
Literally. And
you've got coverage, and you've invested monies and new stuff to hopefully begin to slowly turn these things around. But we'd like to think that there's something we could do that would move this along. But I give you credit.
I think everybody's looking for the thing.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they are.
But I think before we move on, I just I want to say that some of this data is not representative of how hard our teachers are working. This is not a reflection of not working hard. Like, they are working harder than I have ever seen. And as far as math is concerned, in my personal opinion, we have the greatest math instructional leader I've ever worked with. The greatest, the most professional, like, highly qualified teacher I have ever known. And this is not a reflection on what isn't happening. We have to look at things differently, period. So, if there are, do you have a question, Tina?
Actually,
Sorry.
Finish up what you were saying. At some point, and I'm just trying to think, I want to be mindful of the sensitivity of information, but I would be so curious when we talk about on a larger level and advocacy and getting mental health supports. I want to see where the trends are. I want to see but I don't know how to get that unless you go to school to school to school. Like, a question I would ask, are there certain trends within families? You know, I think there's a lot of questions I would want to know, but I'm also aware it's sensitive information.
Yeah.
And I think we have to figure out a way to get the honest, transparent information, but respecting the privacy
I
of
think
it.
that would be tough. But
Yeah, because
I get
that's
it.
the argument we have to make on a bigger level. But we just have to see the trends and where they're coming from.
I wish I could tell you
Yeah.
that just anecdotally, it's, you know, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
There's no boundary there. Much like substance abuse, there's no boundary. It can be anywhere, anybody. It can be our highest achievers, it can be anybody. And I think that, I'm sure our students could probably, would say the same thing, that there is no boundary there.
Yeah.
It's really across the board.
Yeah, I just wonder
Yeah.
I just wonder about like anxiety. Even when you talk about high achieving, there's a whole lot of pressure.
That's what I mean.
It's the anxiety piece, and where does that?
I would be more inclined to look at, which we could get through like DPH, what's the community data? Through the hospitals, they have to report on those things.
Yeah.
So, I think that would give you, I think, more valid data. Me standing up here anecdotally is what it is. It's really just qualitative. So, that's my suggestion.
Thank you.
Yeah, speaking about data and what you were just saying, I'm sure that some of that data is available. I know that most hospitals in Massachusetts were not admitting anyone that wasn't suicidal for a year and a half. I mean, it was crazy. And so that's very, very different, and that is some data. But I don't know when we did our last youth risk survey. I don't know if it was last year or this year. I do know it's every 2 years, and that provides very interesting data, I think, that you might, I don't know that we've ever kept track of it comparing year to year, but it's very interesting.
Yes.
All right.
All right, we're going to move on. Can I just slide right into the next one?
Yeah, so
All right.
next item on the agenda is a Johnson update presentation. Bob.
All right. Johnson data presentation. All right, so again, this is sort of an update on how things are going with JOSM, which has evolved over time. It started in 2017, and it actually started out of a very similar crisis as what we're seeing now, which is an overwhelming amount of failures. That's literally why we started it. It was actually me and David. Dave, come on over here. Dave is my assistant principal, my right hand.
I'll stand on the left.
Man, but he'll stand on. David and I were 2 out of the 4 staff. I was a counselor at the time, and I was looking at the data and going, oh God, this is a lot. And at the time, we were starting to see a decline in the time that students were willing to spend after school to get extra help. And there are a variety of reasons for it. People pulled in a million different directions, and family demands and sports and all those things. So we found an hour in the middle of the day when we collapsed the 3 lunches with the literally 9 bells in the middle of the day. We collapsed that, and we found this 1 hour because we said if we don't do something in the middle, during the day to capture kids, we're not going to capture them. So the purpose of JOSM started because of, that was one thing, because of failures, but also we felt that our kids needed more opportunities to be involved in clubs and activities. And at the time, clubs were, we ran that crazy enrichment block once every other week, and we probably ran, 20, 25 clubs or so. And actually in My Flex Learning, which is where kids schedule themselves for JOSM, there's 357 offerings over a six-day cycle. So, and we're going to talk a little bit about that and how that can be challenging for students too, right? So the purpose of JOSM in 2017 was created initially for academic intervention, for enrichment, for clubs, lunch. And I put lunch in here. And if you can if you can remember what it was like to be in high school, right? And the fear of, is my friend going to be in my lunch block? Right? Like, oh my God, are they in third lunch or first lunch? This took that fear away. You always had your friends with you. You could schedule when you're having lunch with your friends. I remember in 2016, I walked into a bathroom and a kid was eating lunch in the bathroom, and I was like, that's not right. So that's why I put lunch up there. It's also a social emotional learning break. It just takes the temperature down, right? This is a structure like Mark talked about, it's sort of archaic, and we've been doing this for a long time, and it's bell to bell to bell, and it doesn't mirror anything in the real world, yet we still do it. But this sort of gives kids like Molly and Christina that are going to be here till 10 o'clock tonight an hour just to breathe. And our teachers, right? Common planning time. You can see your counselor. Now we're no longer doing our meetings, our grade level meetings. We're not taking them out of English class. We're doing it during JOSM. So we're not losing instruction time. So for those of you that don't know where JOSM came from and the purpose of JOSM, there's the answer. So this is just a quick snapshot of, these are 6 offerings of what our students see. So you'll see there's a grade 9 ELA extra help. There's a math assessment update from Mr. Bowman. There's climate action club, ad lucem club, athletic training treatments. So if you're an athlete and you're injured and you need your treatments, you can go during JOSM in AOT extra help. So Dave's going to talk a little bit about the challenges, and I talked about this. There's 357 offerings, and it's only 50 minutes. There's a 5-minute passing on each side. So it really is 25 minutes. Half of it is for the students' lunch, and the other half, they have to do something with 25 minutes, which goes quickly. You're up.
So I'll just say that the way we organize and handle JOSM is going to continue to evolve. Right now, as you can see, we have a fairly robust sign-up procedure, but not everybody follows it. So there's, it started off with, kids choosing where they wanted to go. There was no paper trail. Then we had a paper trail. Then we had a variety of paper trails. Then we tried a software program that didn't really sync with our information system, and we landed on MyFlex. And this year, in order to increase accountability, which you can tell by our referral numbers, we mirrored what we do for tardies with JOSM. So specifically, if you miss 4 JOSMs, you get a call home by either myself or the adjustment counselor. If you get 8, you get a Saturday school. But there's a lot of moving parts. Not everybody signs up. So what do you do with those guys? You got to track them down. That's time consuming. We do it. And typically, if you're getting a red flag, if you're a student and you're getting a red flag on JOSM, you're probably getting a red flag on tardies and absentees or something else. So it's another one of those things that we use to catch kids who are slipping through the cracks. But right now, as it stands, and we'll continue to refine it, we have a system that is holding students more accountable than they've been in the past. Typically, I handle grades 10 through 12 for discipline. Those kids understand the system, they sign up, they get where they got to go. The younger kids are still learning that, and that's where a majority of those referrals are coming from. But in the end, it's not just about student accountability, it's about advisors making sure kids sign up. MyFlex has been wonderful in terms of revising their system. They built something just for us to make it easy for advisors to check. So I would say on average you might have 1 kid in every advisor's class probably getting away with not signing up for one reason or another. They may have been absent that day, what have you, but that's still too many kids and it adds up. The other part of it is then supervising the advisors, making sure that they're offering things that kids want to go to, making sure that those interesting activities are available both A and B so that the limited amount of space isn't being taken up quickly, but that kids have a lot of choices that are interesting. And all of that takes time, and so we're still working on the best balance for that. But in general, you can kind of see that there's a lot to do, enrichment-wise, extra help-wise, and the beauty of JOSM is probably not found in numbers. It's time, which is the critical component in any kid being successful, and we'll never know exactly what that time is doing for a lot of these kids, but I would agree with Principal Police in terms of the impact it's had over these past 3 years, where we've had a variety of not only substance abuse issues, but mental health issues and so forth. I think it's done anecdotally wonders for kids to be able to, for example, go outside during the pandemic, go outside when we were still hybrid, and kids were here and kids were home, and get some sunshine, and that wasn't the thing that really happened a lot. But now it does. Today I was outside doing lunch duty, and there were 50 or 60 kids outside. And that didn't happen before COVID. Everybody was in the cafeteria with bells ringing. So those are I guess, a quick overview of the challenges. Yes.
The data. So, back to what I said in my first presentation, we're finding that our younger students are carrying a lot of our challenging pieces of data, one being just our failures, our overall, the percentage of failures. So, I don't know if you have the slide in front of you there, but the top one is our quarter one's failures. So grades 8 and 9 carried 68.3% of the total number of failures, 68.3, and 57% of Ds. So I don't consider a D success, so that's why I put that there. And I look at grades after the end of every single quarter, and I go through this, and the first, you're coming out of this, and it's the first quarter, and you try to give them grace, and we're tightening things up, et cetera, and you're training, and then we get to the end of January, and we're rolling into second semester, and I'm like, 70.9% of students not of students in 8th grade, of the total number of Fs. 71% of the total number of Fs are coming out of the 8th and 9th grade. Ds, it was again, that like 57-ish%. So, there's two sides of this. There's the training, the student training that needs to happen, the accountability piece, right? And and I brought it to their attention, and I think they need to understand that, and they need to understand that if they can't properly use JOSM, that we're going to structure it for them, which is what we did. So this is what we did. So this is so the question is, so how are we addressing all of those failures, right? And JOSM isn't the only, it can't be the only answer. Let's just say that it's 25 minutes. So this is just a quick example of the intervention plan that was spearheaded and actually created by our teachers because many of them were sitting in the town hall meeting when I spoke to our students in grades 8 and 9, and they went back and they met as a team. This is what they came up with. So this is our culture. This is what our teachers did. This had nothing to do with me. This is our teachers saying that we cannot allow this. So what did they do? They created a JOSM intervention plan. They created and drafted a letter that went home to families. They created, they sent home my practices and policies, et cetera, and they lock kids down. So if you're not using JOSM successfully, as it states in our handbook, we, as the administrative team, reserve the right to prescribe it for you. So we prescribed it for those students that were failing, that were carrying a lot of those failures. And in 3 weeks, failures dropped by 33% in just 3 weeks. Now, grades closed, they will be posted tonight, so I don't have that data for you, which I know that you're dying for. They're not released until tomorrow, but I can tell you that after 3 weeks, with just simply this, just making them come, holding them accountable, and the weight lifted on the backpack of bricks that they were carrying around was also lifted, right? So in 3 weeks, a simple intervention plan that was created by our teachers dropped failures by 33%. That's it. Please ask away.
That was perfect.
Thank you.
What happens when they don't show up for what they're locked into?
Excellent question.
You're welcome.
This is what he was.
Okay.
I was going to get away.
No, come back.
That's a very good question.
So if you have, as I said, if you get 4 Miss Jawsons, you get a call home. That's usually a call down to the office as well for a little chat. And then when you get to 8, you go to a Saturday school, which is 8 to noon on Saturday morning, which is a fate worse than death. But probably even worse than that is sometimes we'll give kids 4 Jawson detentions. So if they can't make the Saturday school, we'll either assign them to where they need to go, or if it's, in terms of a progressive approach, if it's been something that's happened over and over again, we'll give them a Jawson detention in the guidance office. So the key is getting them to do the right thing. And I think that happens in the conversations at home and with the assistant principals. Because that's the purpose of Jawson, is the student accountability piece. If you look at the original program at the school where it was developed in Florida, and they had a different setup. You couldn't fail any classes at that high school. You had to pass every class every year. So there was super motivation there. We're a little bit more flexible, but not much. So kids need to accrue as many credits as possible to keep their options open. For example, if they want to take an internship in their junior or senior year, you can't be behind in your credits. You don't want to be taking makeup courses online, things like that. But in general, that's where those kids would wind up.
Mr. Russell, thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Yep. Through negotiation, I was a little involved several years ago with Jawson, but I've completely forgotten now, so bear with me. This little here, is this a sample?
Yeah, this is a sample.
Thank you, because I see here Miss Barnes.
Yeah.
So, I'm one of the kids with an F in math, okay? I need to go see my teacher during the Jawson 25 minutes, not an hour, but, and I know where her room is, or his room, and that's where I go. It's not just that there's a math teacher. You're nodding, yes, there is, and
It's actually both. I mean, your teacher will lock you in, and some terminology here might be helpful. If you get an academic overtime, you're required to go see your teacher.
yeah.
Although, if for some reason, you need some extra help and that teacher isn't available, you can go to anybody. So the answer would be both. But primarily, you can get locked in by your teacher to get help from that specific teacher. But
And if there are so many Fs, though, I would think those lock-ins.
They do.
Yeah.
I need to go back to my math teacher.
Yep.
Who knows what I'm not doing.
Yep.
So, okay, that whole in theory, that's happening. And
Yes.
Good, thanks.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And if it doesn't, you go to Saturday school with Mr. Alexander.
yeah.
But I don't know anything about math, so my history.
That's fine. You can teach them history while they're there. Little history and accountability.
Yes.
That was perfect, and 33% decrease in the failures is exactly what we want to hear, and I know that we all support Jawson and its value in many facets of the school day for the kids. It's really important, and we certainly want to continue to support it as it evolves.
Yes, exactly. I think that's the
Because
thing.
everything's evolving, so that with the senior opportunities we have right now too, which would
doing great.
continue to be great. Ms. Games?
I just have a quick question. First of all, love Jawson. Always
I know you do.
have,
I know,
always,
I know.
yeah,
I
always
know.
loved it. So let me just make sure I understood. So it sounds like most of the discipline, all that stuff is happening in the 8th and the 9th grade? Is that what I heard, or did I mishear?
I do not have the answer to that. I was asked that question by.
That's where I
and
heard it. I was like,
and
I heard
said
it somewhere.
If I were to guess, but I don't have it on me, and I would prefer not to.
No, that's
quoted
fine.
on that.
Yeah, and again, I want to respect. No, because I wonder, and this is, I'm just going to say this, but it doesn't mean, no one take it the wrong way, please. But I've always wondered, with 8th to 12 in one building, and I kind of wonder out loud with 8 and 9 being somewhere else. And I know the reasons why 8th, when this building was built, and how you had to, I got all the history. But I just kind of wonder about the mix a little bit. And I mean, I grew up with a 9th grade building. And then I went to high school with 10 and 12. So I've always kind of wondered, it's a big transition for eighth, and probably even the ninth grade kids. So I guess that's where I wonder out loud.
No, I think it's a really good question. I would say, like everything historically, it was never a problem, and we're seeing different emerging problems.
Yeah, okay.
I don't believe that the fact that they're in high school with older kids is why we have behavior issues. I mean, as a matter of fact, I would say that our seniors, by and large, don't pay a lot of attention to our eighth graders.
Chatham High School was 7 through 12 when I was in 7th grade. I was walking the same loop with 12th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders when I was, well, intimidating when you're a 7th grader, but still.
Yeah. And you went to a much smaller high school, but my high school for 10 to 12 was, I don't even remember now, my graduating class was over 500. So I came from a really big, so it was just something I've always kind of wondered.
So on day one advisory, which is when they do their scheduling, it's by grade level.
Yeah.
So grade 8 students are in with a grade 8 teacher, and grade 10 students are together in one advisory. Those are not multi-leveled.
Okay.
But a club is a club is a club, you know, so the clubs are they're grades 8 through 12. So if a student is choosing the Climate Action Club, there could be an 8th grader and a 12th grader in there.
Okay, yeah. And that's not, I just kind of wonder about,
no, I think it's a really good question.
I don't want to say maturity level, because some of them are very mature at in the 8th grade. I just don't know if it's just so, is it just too much?
I think it is a lot, but I think part of what we've always been able to do in previous years is train them.
Yeah.
You know, and that's part of the process is, like David said, it's the ongoing conversations.
Yeah.
You know, and just repeating, and not, you know, I would hate to isolate them from it.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to ask you to do that, yeah.
Christina?
I think that by working with and seeing and talking to and learning with our younger classmates, it's really helping them grow and develop these social skills. In fact, a lot of some of the organizations I'm in are mainly 8th graders because they're very excited to learn and adapt and be a part of this community. And I don't think it's the fact that they're young and they're in this building. It's definitely a socialization thing, and it takes some time. Like, I definitely was scared when I went in, and I didn't get comfortable until I was a sophomore. It's just how we communicate.
And I think, honestly, our seniors are our best models. They're wonderful. And juniors.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Police. Dr. Carpenter, an update on our international trip.
So in Paris today, there were additional riots, mostly centered in front of City Hall. So since that is a good reporting of the protests and rioting that happened today in Paris, our school trip was to go tomorrow to Paris. But just to give you a little update on what's happened since the school committee vote, I notified the travel company Explorica of your vote and that the trip was formally canceled. Explorica responded with an olive branch of saying that they would give an additional $200 above and beyond the 75% travel or the travel insurance reimbursement, which I did not see as acceptable. I only see 100% reimbursement to our families as acceptable, if that's the way they're going. We put out a guidance to our families to do 3 things, and I believe by now each of the families have done that, which is first to file a complaint to Explorica, file with the Attorney General's Office of Consumer Affairs, and file for the trip insurance. And I really appreciate Leah and Joy's support in helping that happen for all of the families, and particularly Leah for all of the phone calls that she's been fielding as families have been going through the process. Joy also helped put out a media release. WBZ came down and did a story on our Best Buddies trip that's gotten a lot of attention out there. and I reached out through Senator Sear and State Rep Peake's offices to connect with the Attorney General's office, and had a long chat with them yesterday and sent them a bunch of supporting documents today. Essentially, our consumer complaint with the Attorney General is threefold. First, that if we even just take Explorca's own words and the communication they sent to us, they said our families are going to be inconvenienced by the civil unrest, and I kind of look at it that that inconvenience, be it the trash on the streets, or the fires, or the protests, or the strikes, or the closures of the museums, or the conflict between the police and some bad actors in these protests, is not what our families signed up for when they signed up to go to Paris. So that they're failing to deliver on what our families signed up for, despite Explorca's belief otherwise. Explorca, and I think it really concerns me that Explorca really failed to deliver on a Best Buddies trip. The presentation that Rory and Miss Linnell and Miss Grogan presented to the school committee back in September 2021 was that this was a Best Buddies trip that was focused on overseas travel and making overseas travel accessible to all students. But as late as less than 1 month before the trip, Explorca was contacting us saying that there would not be wheelchair accessible transportation on a Best Buddies trip that had students who would need that, and when the parent asked for a refund, they said it was too late. And then number 3, which is adding insult to injury, as the parents have responded to Explorca saying, we would like a full refund, Explorca has come up with their little form email to respond back, and they keep responding back to the families, and the families are now reaching out to Lee and I saying, am I wrong that the math is not correct here? They paid a little over $3,400 for the trip. So you could do simple math on the $7,500, and Explorca said that they'd throw in an extra $250. But there are some people that the number that Explorca comes back with in terms of what you'll be reimbursed is less than half of that. So they're not being good actors when it comes to what that 75% plus 25% is. And I've been clear with the Attorney General's office and with Explorca that the only acceptable resolutions here are rescheduling a fully accessible trip when the conflict is gone. That, I think, would be optimal for the kids. I mean, clearly the students want to go on the trip, or to fully refund families 100%. I think Explorca also underestimates how much of a pit bull I can be, and there's some things I just won't let go. So if need be, I will personally pay the $3.98 filing fee in small claims court and see them come down 36 times to go deal with a complaint, because I think any rational person in small claims court can go and say, did you deliver on 2 things or not, and hopefully make families whole if Explorca can't figure that out. And I'm sure they can go and do the mental math and figure out that their legal fees to go and deal with that probably greatly exceed what the writing a full 100% reimbursement check to the families would be. I know everyone matters, I'll stop there.
No, that's great. Thank you for the update. Appreciate it.
Wow.
What's that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Japan is off and going.
Yeah.
In the air. They're in the air right now. So, that is good news. Next item on the agenda would be any subcommittee reports. Ms. Henderson.
So we did have a superintendent evaluation subcommittee meeting today. And it is that wonderful time of year, again, where we talk about Dr. Carpenter's end-of-cycle report, where he gives us an update of where he is and how things went with the goals that he had set at the beginning of the year that we approved. And so I just wanted to give everyone a quick timeline. What's going to happen is at our next meeting on April 27th, Dr. Carpenter will publicly give us his end-of-cycle report with some other resources that are connected to the rubric that we use when evaluating, so that those can go home with everyone, as well as the online fillable form that we will all get the day after that meeting. Oh, perfect. We will get a digital form to fill out and use the resources that Dr. Carpenter gives us on April 27th, to then return to me by May 4th, so a week, to fill out that fillable form that includes every section in the form. So there are some narrative pieces in multiple places on the form, and we have to fill out every single section. Even if it's a short response, it's needed in every section. And then on May 11th, I will bring that back, compiled into a summary, and we will all have our individual evaluations, and that will be presented on May 11th. How does that sound?
Great timeline, because that's the last meeting for at least one of us.
Right. All right, great.
Okay, good. That works.
Next item is superintendent's report.
In terms of some recognitions, on March 27th, our high school students were able to experience firsthand the dangers of distracted and impaired driving through the Save a Life Tour, which uses simulators to show students the risk of driving while texting and while under the influence. The program was brought to Monomoy by the Harwich Youth Counselor Sheila House and supported by opioid recovery and remediation funds from Chatham and Harwich. So thank you, Ms. House and the towns, for supporting the event. The high school also held its annual cultural fair this afternoon, which was organized by Ms. Fort Doyle and Ms. Vanderberg. In the main street hallway and the cafeteria were filled with students visiting various tables, which were all student-led and focused on a specific culture's food, history, music, and more. It was a great opportunity for our students to show off their heritage and to introduce students to cultures they may not have experience with. Lastly, we would like to thank the district's All Sports Booster Club for purchasing 3 dry suits for our sailing team. And then in terms of some other updates, in terms of the regional agreement, as of today, we still have not got feedback from DESE on whether or not the suggestions that they made are suggestions or requirements. I am not optimistic that we'll get feedback from DESE on their suggestions, on whether they're required or not. And we got an email from them, Mark Terry and I did yesterday, basically saying that it's still with council, and so I think that we'll have to be looking at this as a next year thing, but until we get feedback from DESE, we don't know if we need to pull together our district agreement subcommittee and discuss, are there things on the list that they have that we want to respond to, incorporate into changes that that would go beyond just the updating language and removing obsolete stuff.
Question? Are you done? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh. With the regional agreement, help me remember, is that something that goes on the warrant for town meeting?
It does. So, Chatham's went to the printer very early, so it was put on Chatham's town meetings warrant. Harwich, I spoke with them and just said that we're in this limbo with DESI, and Harwich did not put it on their warrant.
Okay, good. And so I guess at Chatham, somebody just has to stand up and say, we're not going to do this year? Okay. Oh, and one other thing, Madam Chair, if we do have to assemble again, we need another Chatham person because right now it's just Meredith, you and me, and so we'll need another Chatham person, I think. Okay.
I just wanted to point out that our very own Molly Graham also helped co-organize the multicultural fair. And
Thank you, Molly.
love you, Molly.
All right. Next item on the agenda, we have a second reading of policy file JLCDA, administration of narcotics.
So you'd like me to speak about this?
No, I don't think so. We're actually just looking for a motion, and then when we get a second, if anyone has any questions or discussion, because we did discuss it at this is the second reading.
Can I move to approve this?
Yes, absolutely. Your motion, you want to say what your motion is?
I move to approve the new policy on Narcan.
What policy file number?
Oh, God, I just put it down. Where is it?
At the bottom of the agenda.
I'm sorry, I have the school committee meeting one in front of me.
That's okay. It's on the bottom of the agenda, Sharon.
Okay. Yes, okay, great, thank you. So, yes, I move to approve policy file JLCDA, administration of Narcan.
Perfect. And is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any questions or discussion? All right, and we'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Finnegan?
Aye.
Ms. Games?
Aye.
Ms. Gray? Aye. Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Henderson?
Aye.
The chair is an aye. And then we have the second reading of policy file BE, school committee meetings. Looking for a motion. Ms. Henderson?
I'd like to move to approve file BE, school committee meetings.
In a second.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the policy? All right, and I will do a roll call vote. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Finnegan?
Aye.
Ms. Games?
Aye.
Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Henderson?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye. We have had the presentation of the warrants this evening, and I would welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
And we will roll call vote out. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Finnegan?
Aye.
Ms. Games?
Aye.
Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Henderson?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye, adjourning at 8:25.